There we go.
Okay. Hello. We haven't done anything really here in quite a while. I've been posting on my Substack, but other than that, nothing sort of Empyrean related that is public facing. Uh, Everyone here, we all interact regularly, um, and we're hoping to start sort of a podcast series or series in that we're going to be doing this regularly. Not that it's focused coherent around any real topic. Uh, Today, because it is a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, we've sort of decided that we're going to talk about all the salient subjects that are stirring in the ethers right now, from Epstein. And Epstein is one big major event that everyone sees, and then some of the more occult things, astrology, of course, that sort of means things like language, culture, society, um, going through the the energies of Saturn and Neptune, Aries, where they are conjunct. Some of what that means, thanks to John, who knows much more about astrology than I do in many of these instances.
Book wise, not
Um,
experience wise. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I am an experiencer, but somewhat illiterate in many of these magical arts. Um, but yeah, that's sort of the end of the introduction. We can all settle in, just talk naturally about any of these topics. Um, yeah, forget that the audience is here.
Well, I kind of wanted to ask John to explain the conjunction again because it's been quite a while. You've been hyping this thing for more than a year for me, actually. So, do you want to
So
explain?
what's it all about? Yes. So the last time that these two planets were conjunct in Aries was 700 BC. So Steiner talked about the last conjunction as being the preparatory work for the entire flowering of the classical Greek period. And for Steiner, this was particularly important for our times, the work the Greeks did. He said the Greeks were the first time in human civilization where the two major streams came together. The stream, as he calls them, the Platonists and the Aristotelians, the people who have the mindset of the Epimethean, the Aristotelians, and the people who have the mindset of the Prometheans, the Platonists. I've always thought about those two streams in terms of Cain and Abel. Anyway, Steiner said that past the millennium, that the Earth would, for the first time since way back then, have these two schools present on the Earth. That the main leaders of both the Aristotelians and the Platonists, or the Cains and the Abels, would inaugurate a new civilization. He said the work that was done now would define the rest of the millennium, just like the work that the Greeks did, around the time of Aristotle and Plato. That was basically the culmination. Socrates, those people, just like that defined the rest of the intellectual soul age. He says that the Greeks influenced the mind, bringing in the spirit, and that period of time lasted up until the 1400s. And our modern age, our consciousness soul age, that is our mission, not to develop intellect anymore, but to develop consciousness. That this mission will carry on from 1400 AD till 3500 AD. And it is now, exactly now, and the work of these two streams, which is what we're looking towards to define the rest of the millennium. So Saturn and Neptune together represent the yin yang, as Darian was speaking about before, that Saturn represents global power institutions, and Neptune literally is the old Atlantean consciousness, the subconscious. And these are the two forces that have hitherto been absolutely manipulated by the world powers. The last time the Neptune cycle kicked off like this in Aries, inaugurated the U.S. Civil War. And Steiner talks about how the subconscious was going to war, the human mission versus the mission of Ahriman. And we can see it represented by the federal government versus what the Confederacy represented. So that's what Neptune brought the last time. So we have a reset. This cycle is now beginning again. And now Saturn has joined it. So Saturn brings the physical part. These two things coming off together, now we have the opportunity to absolutely shed the past, both in the psychological world, psychological situations, political parties, gender relationships, all of it, and the actual structure that supports that. So everything is out the window now. All of the and I think Epstein is a great thing to focus on for how it's getting reset, but the cycle has now ended. Pisces has dissolved all of the Saturnian physical structures, and Pisces has dissolved all of the subconscious issues. So here we are on the threshold of the beginning of this new cycle. Neptune's will last for 165 years, and the Saturn, I think, will be in Aries, I think, for just a few years, but it goes on for the rest of its, through the progression of the zodiac signs, bringing it with it a change in each one of the signs. To say something more, what I find very exciting is what seems like a new impulse or new opportunity to unite the streams. For me, that's one of the positive things I believe to take away from the Epstein situation, is to realize it's not left and right. And that these, to imagine how these ideologies can come together, gender identities, all these kinds of things, to imagine a reconciliation between the Cains and the Abels, that I think is the great, that's the great future. That's a great opportunity.
Well, we had been talking before privately that about the battery, the sort of social battery that these people are using, where masculine and feminine are at war with each other. We have God and the devil. All of our systems are conflict related. We've sort of been in this eternal revolution, perma war mindset for basically all of our known consciousness. Everyone alive now has experienced this. There's still sort of that love and light hippie woo-woo nonsense where it's like we all have the understanding. Well, sane cultured people have this understanding that is sort of nonsense. Like these are not developed ideas, but there's also the truth in what those people are saying, that if they were to catch on to, if they were to grasp this loving way to be, and were to refine this to where it became more of a co-equal, balanced love and reason sort of society, then all of our problems would be dulled in their severity. We would still have problems. We'll always still have problems, but we are through our systems, through our institutions, we are making these problems much worse than they need to be. There's a Schadenfreude of the elite, that the hatred of themselves and the commoner. All these sort of Sith attributes are foundational to our society, and this energy sort of allows us to, and it's not even something you need to consciously do, but you will begin breaking down these systems just through happenstance events in the world, like Epstein release files, anything else we discover as time goes on. You will see the erosion of the world, basically. And we're here now, sort of, you've probably seen online the the Renaissance culture that's emerging. People are talking about, oh, the new Renaissance, the AI, digital Renaissance, all these things in various different flavors. And we're hoping to integrate that, and create our own sort of cultures for the new world, water-bearing cultures that are not so devious.
Well, we kind of have three sort of layers of I don't know what to call it, but John has been a very conscious sort of you've studied astrological cycles very consciously, but you don't experience them as major changes. You sort of, I think you described it as like, after they happen, you can sort of map them onto, various astrological events. But then I think Darian has experienced them, but I think he's been pretty conscious of the events themselves, because I think he studied astrology for quite a while, and I was just completely coming into it blind, because I was experiencing a lot of these changes, but I was not attributing any of them to astrological changes at all. And since last year, I have sort of dug into that whole side of I'm not sure what to call it yet. That science, maybe. I've dug into it more and realized how closely my experience maps onto all of these changes. And one of these sort of major changes that happened for me was realizing how closely my life events and just how I react to them has been linked to the Neptune cycles, which is not something that, so the astrology that I had around me growing up was the Jyotisha, right? The Indian astrology. And that doesn't even have Neptune in it. So it was, I had picked up little bits and pieces from that before, not really tracked it at all. But even there was no room to actually like look at the Neptune cycles and see what they were doing. But then you had pointed out to me that major change for Neptune happened last March, and then there was a retrograde, I think, starting in August, and then it went back to, I think it went from Pisces to Aries, then to Pisces, and now it's back in Aries.
Yes.
And all of those changes in the last year, I've felt so strongly the change in energy. Neptune in Pisces has the past however many years that it was in Pisces, it brought really intense dreams for me. It was a very sort of watery, dissolution sort of time of my life. Pretty much everything that I started, I couldn't really finish anything. Everything would just dissolve. And
well, that's Pisces in general. That's sort of
yeah.
Pisces.
But I was never really attributing it to Neptune. Obviously, I didn't really, I had no exposure to it. But it's been fascinating sort of realizing how closely it maps. And then the recent Aries change that happened on the 26th of January, I think, that has been, that has brought quite a lot of, sharp energy change for me. It's I'm just feeling a lot more energetic, and things are not dissolving away. They are, it feels like a war front almost, which,
well, you can sort of see these things as you have a personal microcosm which is sort of rotating in its sort of cycles, and then the greater clock outside, like second versus hour or minute hands, were arranged in this structure of recursive influence where your personal cycles are going on that were to the degree we understand them versus the degree to which we understand the celestial bodies, they're all playing with each other in sort of a dance, and you're getting these effects. So certain people, based on whatever their internal clock is doing, may experience different things than the external or the astrological mapped events. So
And
the
then
way in which
I don't want to discount the fact that I've become conscious of these events now, because I feel like that has definitely intensified the changes. But even before I was conscious of these things, I sort of went back through the everything that happened in my life for the past 10, 12 years, and even the smallest thing just lines up. And I think we've talked about a few of them personally, but yeah, it's been fascinating.
well that sort of retro dating, that is the like epimethean side of this. You're going back, you're looking at everything that you've experienced, and that can be almost as blurry as the Promethean aspect of projecting into the future. That now it's sort of at both extremes, and the gradient between them. You're seeing how the system, the matrix, quote unquote, works. So you're relating to that, how you're experiencing it now, how that matches with past experiences, and then how you're developing your predictive ability for future events. So it's astrology isn't. I mean, it's something that maps to any other sort of mapping procedure. You're developing a system of knowing, and modern world needs to sort of take heed of it scientifically. I've been a advocate for basically scientific yoga for quite a while, just getting all of these mystical things which have value but may be veiled to the modern person with esoteric or mythic consciousness terms. We need to both bring that rational cohesion to it, as well as expanding the modern person to be able to understand the mythic consciousness of the past. Both of these aspects of tuning the language of the past to meet the needs of the present person, and educating the present person to be able to understand the thoughts of the past. These are both sort of essential requirements in alchemy of the collective and personal.
Well, I feel as though, as with any kind of science, right, there's a pretty strong impulse to sort of become deterministic about it, right? Any system of knowledge just sort of has that pull to it. And that was actually one of the main reasons that I never looked into astrology before, is the fact that so much of it does feel so deterministic, right? It's like I don't know if Western astrology does this, but if you go to like Indian Jyotisha, they will predict all sorts of, eerily precise details for you. And my experience has been that not all of them will come true. If you go to a good Jyotisha, then they will tell you that a particular moment or a particular time period has a high chance, right? They will tell you that the yoga is there for something to happen.
Well,
but
because
they
what
will
they're
not tell
doing
you
is
that this is going to happen.
what they're doing is they're sort of mapping your expanded temporal body. So you have these
Right.
sort of karmic just cause and effect threads, which extend from you into the future and past, and this is your expanded. I'm not sure, John. You may assist me here if that's your etheric or astral body, the sort of the body of potential, and what has happened in the future and past.
Etheric, from my understanding. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
well,
it's The
Go ahead.
the Indian system, to me, is a lot like the modern astrological system, and it's wonderful, the predictive power that it has. If there's anything that's not wonderful about it, is that in our modern age, the age of consciousness, it means that our mission is to incorporate our individual spirit into our soul. And in the past, the age that we're coming from, the spirit was not connected to the soul. The individual spirit was not connected to the soul. It was the group soul that was connected to the soul. The identity of the nation, the identity of geography, the identity of the egregore. And back in those days, the egregores were mostly on the side of human beings. Those spirits incarnated into the soul groups of people and into soul individualities, and that determined fate. That in our age, what we are supposed to do is to overcome the natural powers and conditions of the soul, so that all the wonderful predictive powers that astrology can give us fights against our individuality, and that in the future, if astrology is going to be positive, it's more the coloration. Instead of, you're not going to go on a trip because it's going to be raining and you won't make it, but rather it will be raining, so you must prepare yourself. And it's the spirit that says, no, it is my mission. I will make the journey, and I'll prepare myself for it, knowing that it's going to rain. And that's
what once was a guardrail becomes a cage, sort of as you attain mastery of self. The notes on the page become sort of suggestions more than requirements.
Yeah.
And I've seen what you're talking about with the. Oh, someone was. Is that Micah? Yes. Hello. We're already recording, so just
you're muted.
Enjoy.
Sup, everyone? It's a bunch of people.
Hello.
Yeah. Yep. We've been talking for a little bit. I'm just going to continue with what I was saying, and then we'll get around to saying hi. With the egregores, how they were more attuned to humans, the human will in the past. I think this is because people began understanding what egregores were, and then they started to effectively tame them, and they use the god of a people, a tribal deity, to sort of corral it. So they're corralling groups of people by manipulation of egregores. And you see this sort of scale over time until something like the Catholic Empire wants to create a totalizing, literally Catholic universal egregore, where sort of every unique culture is conditioned by the framing that they have set into place. And we are now at a point where we're working on developing our sovereignty to detach from these collective spirits. And it is easier now for us to do this because we recognize that there are people controlling these group cultures, psyops, whatever else, and that there's sort of a selection pressure where we need to break away, or we will be sort of consumed.
Yeah, along those lines, according to Steiner, that the secret societies, the elite, that they have the capacity to control us only after the cultural influences play out. So if we take the Neptune-Saturn conjunction in Aries, for instance, that right now that energy, the reset.
Sorry, John. Yeah, Micah, there's in Meet itself, there is a setting for noise cancellation. You can check and see if that helps. But yeah, okay. John, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the great positive thing about this moment, is that the reset and what happens after the reset will first and only be available to those people who are awake, those people who are yearning and perceiving and striving towards their own inner development and what is happening in the world. It is only that energy, that substance that is not picked up and worked with and digested, that will fall to the powers that be. And that's one of the key things to understand about the difference between the Prometheans and Epimetheans, that this is a Promethean stage. This is Aries, which is the fire sign, the first sign of the zodiac. It's the sign of creation. And so there's a reset point for the whole global subconscious situation represented by Neptune and the whole global power structure. So we can feel that. We can feel, especially with the Epstein files and what's going on in the world, is that the elite have lost it. That it is crumbled, and they have to wait. They must wait until the cycle moves on to a considerable distance, and wait for the fruits that fall through the fingers of the people who had the opportunity but don't seize it, before that they can regain a position to reassess, reform, recontain, and recontrol populations, both the subconscious and the physical power structure. So the idea of the soul and spirit becomes very important there. It's not just simply a matter of the zodiac says so, and the soul conditions are such, so it will be. But rather, the zodiac is giving us the power to light the way, to provide the energy, but it's up to us to use that energy, fuel in our own tanks, understanding our own machinery, our own identity, destiny. All of those things have to do with our spirit, our own individual spirits. And it's as much as that can be seized individually and within the groups that we're working in, the better. That will transform the world. And according to Steiner, this is the defining moment, the defining power opportunity for the rest of the millennium.
So in essence, the culture and world building powers are the fire that we can take from, like, we're being offered this right now. There's sort of a chaotic scramble to develop new systems in all kinds, whether that's systems of government. I've brought up the idea of holons, and I have it sort of in mind. I need to work on it more, but instead of something like monarchy or democracy, something like holarchy, where everyone is a sovereign individual. They are essentially a monarch, a king to themselves, but we are kings working amongst each other. We're we're essentially forming unions or handshake agreement bodies of connective tissue with other sovereigns, and developing systems of government that are not, I mean, you obviously can't have an anarchic system of government. Many people want a sort of anarchy, but I think what we really need is to sort of, if you take the best elements of anarchy and monarchy, you get this sort of system, and it's not just a pure synthesis of these two. It's its own thing in its own right. But I think I would like to call that holarchy whenever I get around to writing more about it. And also the subtitle of this post, I put "The Ram of Fire clears the way for the water bearer." So I have been seeing need for first destruction. The destruction often calls to me. It's like, oh, we're getting rid of, we're clearing the way of all this all the corruption, and then will come a phase of creation. So, or it's not quite so linear. So there will be creation and destruction. Like they're all happening somewhat together, but it will be front-loaded destruction, and then creation, and then after that will be preservation. And so these will be the sort of the phases, and in that preservation phase there will be creation and destruction simultaneously, where we try something, we've created something, it doesn't work, we get rid of it, we destroy it. Maybe in that destruction we we get some lumber or stone back from the demolition, and then we're able to repurpose it. That's sort of the preservation phase. But we are currently in an era of destruction where we'll be needing to rethink all of our taken for granted systems, whether this is government, science, any sort of social order, organizational principles, religions, etc.
I think you briefly touched on it, but the battery structure of, you know, the Cain and Abel, I think that's what John keeps calling it, but that structure seems to be pervasive, and I would like to see that, you know, I wouldn't say that I'd like to see it completely eliminated, but I would like to see it not be the default anymore.
Well, when I've brought it up, and I touched on it early today, I think there's a term I got from Jonathan Vervaeke where it's what your left and right hemisphere do, where you can achieve stability you can achieve stability by two things pushing together, and that creates a more stable environment than one side just trying to stop where it is. So these sort of opponent forces, they need to be reconstrued to be not moral. These are not moral things where it's like if light is good, then dark is bad. We have these in psychology it's called splitting. Most people are the cultural identity is itself engaging in childlike thinking known as splitting, where you separate into extremes of good and bad, and you're not able to have nuanced mature opinions. And this is sort of the consciousness stage of many people, and they're bringing this with them into everything they touch. So the political divide, any sort of divide where it's sort of sports teams of red versus blue, good versus bad, Satan versus the devil. They are not. That is not a mature way to understand these ideas. I've often said that we sort of turned Devi into devil. We took sort of this occult dark power. I think in Islam it's called Shakina, the feminine power of God. It's very similar to Shakti, though not as developed as Shakti is, but it's sort of the same idea. We need to go about looking at all these sort of evils, or not just evils, taboos, and sort of reinterpreting them. This is not, since we brought up Epstein earlier, I'm not saying like, oh, maybe actually. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in itself is that is an actual evil. Like that is an actual bad thing that we need to be rid of and create systems which prevent and do not incentivize these kinds of behavior. But there are many things which are not evil, that are not that do not harm people, that are not that we need not be averse or attracted to, that are sort of possessing us. We're living on these sort of gravity fields, or a magnetic field repulse, attract sort of behaviors around these neutral conceptual objects. Like we're adding so much of our own philosophy and shared herd think onto topics that every person needs to understand what the time and place for something is. For example, violence. Many people will think, if they don't outright say, that violence is completely evil, and they will never, like, there's no time for violence, and this is silly. This is a silly thing to do. This is a child. This is what a dumb parent teaches to a child once they've hit someone or something. This is not a sustainable cultural paradigm to adopt. But we have many broken ideas like this sort of running through the psychological code of people and legal systems. And that more personal psychological code is more Neptune focused, and the Saturnian legal code is more Saturn. And I think we can, in ourselves and in the Polis city, go about restructuring them. And it does have to be on both ends, inside and out. We cannot just, as many do, they just want to change the world, but they will not change themselves at all. And then there are many who sort of isolate themselves in a cave, only doing inner work, and they do not go out into the public and provide much of anything. We need to bridge those. We need to create a culture which is for a progressive sort of third.
Well, while you were talking, I just realized that we've sort of laid out this, like, what has been wrong with the past institutions and in the internal world, right? Neptune and Saturn both. We've sort of laid that out pretty technically among ourselves, but I think the reason that we call it a battery is that is kind of like how it is structured, right? The two poles, there's like one side that is powerful but evil, and the other side is weak. It's like the victimized side, but it is morally good. And then there's like an exchange of energy between them, and that gets extracted out. That is kind of technically how it functions. And you can see this kind of battery structure in pretty much every, I don't even want to call it system, because it happens in relationships.
I'd say this is a low quality or dirty battery, like a dirty bot. It's not what would I say? It's entropic. It's not a useful. Like we know there are better alternatives. Yeah, like instead of conflict, you can have. I've often referred to it as sort of, this is an Aries system, the god of war, and then we're seeking the Eros system.
I've called it a zero-sum system.
Yeah.
And one of the fascinating things that I realized was that Abrahamic religions sort of project that zero-sum worldview on the entire universe.
It's telos and finality. I think they actually are worshiping Saturn in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I brought up or sort of came to me that I can call the Abrahamic God use. It is use. It is the sort of driving force of it. What the modern world we're living in now is use. It is sort of a manipulation.
It's extractive. It
tool worship.
It goes out and extracts energy from what is outside of it.
Well, I mean, as we can see through people, like so sort of we've worshipped a dead object until that dead object is seen as a higher force than the living objects which made it. Sort of thanatological, death oriented, and now we can begin to not have that. We like, I mean, everyone could at any time have thought about this and decided not to.
Well, we did think about it before, but I feel as though the time is now sort of ripe for
collective change.
Yes, for collective, bringing something into being in this way.
Yeah, and I've referred to it as the sort of new battery, or the new. I don't know if you want to call it a battery, because there are these, anything in manifest experience has this dual nature. So there's the whatever you're experiencing, it has yin aspects, it has yang aspects, it has Shiva and Shakti inherent in the experience. And if you are prescribed a system of splitting anything into, oh, these elements of it are bad and these elements of it are good, and this bad leads you to sort of hell and this good leads you to sort of heaven, you're engaging in this teleologic linear logic system that does not leave space for sovereign discernment of what these things actually are. You can't form a relationship with anything you think is evil. It's just not possible. I mean, if it turns out that it is evil, or that it is, it's hard to even say evil because it's sort of a butchered term. Hello, dog. I think this sort of renaissance requires a going beyond good and evil. Not in that we allow evil things, but we grow up and handle these complex objects with the care and discernment they require in order to understand them. Just as, you know, you meet someone, they do something you like or you don't like, you start typing them into good or bad person. Or, well, I'd like to say I don't anymore, but it takes a lot of work to stop doing that, to stop pedestalizing or whatever the opposite of casting them down as I keep being drawn to my study of psychology and sort of cluster B personality disorders, where they are the perfect manifestation of this culture. Like, they are what this culture is designed to create: a bipolar disorder, narcissist, sociopath, psychopath. Those are the exemplars of this culture. They have done perfectly to become the CEO. Let's not even say CEO. They've just done what the system is designed to produce. All of us who are healthy psychologically and normal, or just trying to get by, we are failures of the system. We're not good workers. We haven't become callous enough. We still have empathy. We still have care. We still have considerations for our own well-being that prevent us from doing sort of meaningless work or whatever else. And that is something the regime cannot stand. And so we must develop a formal order that is human. Like, it's not something alien ending us to be something we're not. It should sort of hold us to the standard of our highest potential without enforcing this alien constraint. Because that is how it feels, I think, to anyone who will resonate with what I'm saying now. All of us sort of feel as if there's a tyrant, some alien presence that is we have to do this to make money, to get a job, to survive. And it needn't be that way. So we're trying to develop systems that are not this extractive, anti-human sort of slave system.
Well, it's not just, to survive and all of those, make money to be able to eat, all of that. It's just, I think the tyrant is like, it doesn't even have an end usually. It's just, you have to do this.
Well, no, it is just sort of, it is the spirit of that. It is that negative. It is the, we worship degradation and retardation. We're worshiping a dark spirit, basically. And you see people like perhaps Epstein or people like that. They are individuals who are doing this sort of attending to, when I say worship, I mean like attending to something. Many people in the system are not doing that, but they are enveloped by it. So we all are in a clergy. We're not in a clergy, but we're like in liturgy of this sort of demon. Uh, just by our engagement with the economic and political systems, our desire to vote, our whatever else, and just where we live, people who quote unquote own this land, etc. We sort of pledge our fealty to this corrupting agency.
No, my point was that it's not usually the ends that you're describing are completely superfluous. People, if you give them all the resources, if you give them money for not doing anything, if you just make it so that they don't have to do anything, right? They can just go and do whatever they want. They, people can't live like that. They are so under the spell of this tyrant spirit that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I was trying to sort of speak about the being in itself, or the formative egregore. People are groomed generationally to be like
But
that. So we're there.
Like, do all of these things work, or you have to do all of these things so that something will happen. So whatever comes after "so that" is usually just a rationalization. I don't think it has anything to do with it's not, because that is what, if you start sort of unraveling this line of reasoning where people are like, well, I have to work, I have to work 12 hours a day, or sometimes 16 hours a day. I have to do this and do that and have this and have that and all sorts of things. If you start unraveling it, there's no logic to it. It just,
well,
there's no logic to it. There's no coherence to it.
It's more that it's the narrative. So I think what we might be able to call narrative like that, where it's sort of the story people are telling themselves. It mimics logic, but I would sort of consider that to be a narrative is the Antichrist. Like, technically, I think that's what it is. It is a malevolent, or it need not even be malevolent, but it is an artificial logos that is guiding you. It's a fiction, basically. You're following a fiction, whatever it is. The logos or the Tao, they're based the way. They are the logical orienting. Like, when you are oriented properly, you're following the logos or the Tao. Or Da, whatever it is. If you are captured by a narrative, you are in league with the Antichrist, or various Antichrists, or whatever. So I'll just for the Christian, the odd Christian viewer. So we're recognizing the enemy, pointing it out, sort of, that these are toxic processes that are, they're not just what we're experiencing as external systems. They are integrated, in psychology called introjects, into our sort of our bones. We will live out these patterns even if the corrupt sort of tyrant systems are removed externally. It reminds me of the internal versus external jihad. So many people, they hate Epstein, they hate the pedophile, they want to destroy that outward evil. But I've written some notes on it here on Substack, where you remove that external evil, you will have to confront your internal evil. And when that happens, you will just become the next Epstein. I know that's how it will work. Like, it's just, this happens repeatedly, where it's just you kill, like when the left or right gains power, and then they just screw over the other one, and then it keeps this sort of pendulum back and forth. It will just keep repeating, because those people who are being rallied, made into the vanguard, and fighting the wars, the culture war, whatever it is, they're not doing deep work. They're just doing external regime change or sort of. They're not doing anything which meaningfully disrupts the systems in place. They are behaving as they're acting out the process of the battery, believing that they are stopping the battery or they are changing the whatever it is. And if you just look at sort of history, we see that over and over again, where it's like, oh, the good guys won, the bad guys won. It's just back and forth. Nothing ever happens. The left is in power, the right is in power. Neither one is good as.
I feel like we've been talking forever. Rajiv and Micah have not had a chance to talk at all.
Oh yeah, Micah, we cut you off right at the beginning, but if you want to unmute your mic or say anything or.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hi. I'm also happy to listen as much as Rajiv is.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing, I honestly, I've just been listening and contemplating and reflecting and kind of trying to press this onto the things that I'm currently doing and trying to
You're
work
our live studio audience. That's who you
Yeah,
are.
pretty much. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
If I come up with any good questions, I'll drop them in.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
no. The only thing I've been doing is just kind of reinterpreting all of what guys been talking about. But please continue.
And what we're saying, just in general, I mean, you can go back to listening. Yeah. What we're saying in general, every single person will have a different sort of interpretation of it. That's another one of the things that sort of needs to shift. I've been talking a lot about, or writing a lot about, meta culture, which means a culture that surrounds all your cultures and enables them to be and sort of sorts them for their validity in a non-predatory way. So instead of having a monoculture, sort of everyone can assimilate and be the same, which is what you've seen with basically multiculturalism, where you have a bunch of different colored people who all have different orientations and whatever else, but they're just becoming the same gray slab of Soviet slop. We don't want that. You should sort of the Renaissance will have expression again, and you saw this in the original Renaissance. You saw the breaking away from the uniformal order of the Catholics. People are starting to engage with art. They're doing weird esoteric things, and it's just sort of preparing people for our need to do this again, just now. So it's different, of course, but that's just an example you can look at to sort of see a past version of what we're going to be doing. Not just us. I mean, because we have personal group oriented goals to sort of do this for ourselves, but everyone will be doing this like little bubbles in a pond, all emerging. I'm sure. I sort of see it as we're likely going to enter a sort of a fief system, where there are little decentralized groups who will be engaging with each other through like sort of intermediary systems, like maybe you have this chat group or whatever, and then they're being plugged in a similar way to like you have a r/ or like a little group in a social media community. These are what the government of the external world will start taking, quote unquote, its orders from the internal, more implicit functions of society. I think that is what sort of we're going to let yin lead for a while. That's sort of what it seems like it's going to happen, where it's like the things you do privately or amongst your small groups will begin to be the external way of processing sort of group information. So instead of, you could sort of see it as, for the American example, states gaining their sovereignty and acting as little kingdoms, little dukedoms or whatever. Because America is an empire. It's not a nation, it's an empire. There's little nations in them. I think the things like X or Reddit or even Substack, these things will necessarily evolve from this unified structure into the more, I mean, I've seen people call it techno-feudalism. There's a guy, on Substack, Cyber Hermetics. I don't remember, but he probably knows what I'm talking about, where we have this matrix server, we're engaging with it, and the author is developing social media. And then these social medias will sort of, just as you post a link from one social media to another, this sort of expansive net is the way we now do everything. We do politics this way. We do, like, this is our social cultural software. And I think that's something to consider in this sort of Renaissance updating process, is that this digital landscape is it's acting as a scaffold for what we do with everything else in the real world. And we need to make sure that the problems inherent in these systems we have today are not present in the next iteration. John, you might want to talk a little bit about the sort of the Ahriman nature of these systems as a whole, and how to sort of prevent.
Yeah, so I always think about the human being as divided into the soul aspects of head, heart, and hands, and that is reflected in the macrocosm of society as the political realm, the economic, and the cultural realm. We run into problems in society because it's flipped upside down to how it ought to be. That for a healthy human body to operate in the world, the digestive system, the guts, the economy has to serve the mind. That goes from the gut up to the blood and supplies our brain with blood so that we can think. And we have a society that's flipped. That expression, we have our head in our ass, is absolutely correct. That that anybody who's ever written something, has been an artist, you participate on Substack, and there's always that person that says it, or you feel it yourself, or to give value to what you've done, you sell it. You're very good. You should make money off of that. And so we flip what is the highest, our thoughts, which should be freed from the necessities of the body, and it becomes the opposite. That now our highest thinking should bring monetary return. And that's the primary way that Ahriman, that you were asking about, manifests in the world. He is the one that turns digestion into our highest priority, survival of the fittest. That becomes the measure of excellence. That the war tests us the best. The economy is based on scarcity, and performance creates excellent human beings, which we all know is false. We all know that the only virtues, the only moral forces that the economy operates out of is fear and greed. That's it. There's nothing else. It's the fear of overinvesting that keeps us from losing everything, but it is the greed of having that engages us. And that's awful. It produces immoral people when we have the focus of our thinking to serve the economy. So Ahriman creates artificial scarcity and artificial opportunities, creates artificial forms like the platform. The whole design, the idea of the platform, the internet, is just simply to organize guts and digestive organs. It has no necessity. That the internet could be an absolute cultural experience built on the old model of just having individual websites communicating as you please. But instead, Ahriman has the desire to control. And so everything is compartmentalized with these platforms, and the whole thing becomes about gaming algorithms and so on and so forth. So with this effort, really what we're trying to do is create a culture. That's what we're trying to do. Share ideas, share identities, life's missions, and give each other mutual support in that. And the two major constraints on that are the Ahrimanic economy, artificial scarcity, so on and so forth, and then the political realm, which serves the economic. And it is the political realm that denies us our rights. One of the major things that we find is they, meaning the economy, through the political realm, works very powerfully to prevent our right to assemble. That what is on the table right now, the new world order that they're proposing is, hey, everybody's going to be fine. Everybody's going to get the money, and the money's there. We know Steiner has said so, and the spiritual people know it's not necessary for most people to work. There is well enough energy, resources, infrastructure to support everyone to a very high standard of life, great dignity, much more than we have right now. That the reason why we have to work so hard is not normal. It is absolutely artificially imposed. So,
wasn't there a post that was going around on Substack? This was a while ago because I have not been active on there, but there was a post that was like comparing the life of a medieval peasant to modern day workers. Yeah.
It's wonderful that we know this now. Like, but back when I started studying this stuff, nobody was saying that. Everybody thought I was a schizophrenic tool and retarded. And why would I look at these things? But it's wonderful that people recognize that actually, yes, in the Middle Ages, the quality of life was way better than what we have right now. It's all imposed scarcity. And one of the great dangers is that the elite, and they're shaking in their boots, they are, but they're saying, we have a solution. We'll give you health. We will give you wealth. We will give you sovereignty, but not beyond your own apartment, not beyond your own. You do not have the right to assemble. And that is something that, that we see constantly on the internet. We hear people have been deplatformed. People have been kicked off. We saw it happen to Trump. We watched an economic entity, Twitter, remove the president's ability to communicate with the people every day. What an incredible thing to happen. I was not familiar with the internet at the time, but when people tried to explain the situation to me, I couldn't understand it. I was like, wait a second.
Well, before he got banned, he used that platform to get elected, right? He basically got elected because of that platform.
It's incredible that is an economic power that is beyond a shadow of a doubt that is determining political power. So what they want to do is they want to prevent the right to assemble. And in terms of destruction, creation, how do you build a culture? How do you bring in those spiritual beings? How do you bring in your own spiritual growth and have the society, the group, the small culture support that? It's a very simple proposition and very necessary, very human. It's inherent in the constitutional right to assemble, but it is that very thing that is being attacked. And in terms of what to do, what are the dangers? It's very tricky, but in terms of destruction, I appreciate the sentiment of destruction, but so often that the impulse to destroy means to get revenge, to break the vault open and take the money. But if we still value the money and we loot it, we're in that same situation as Darian mentioned. We become that evil that we wish to replace. That one of the necessary things for human beings to grab a hold of is through the right to assemble, that we assume our power of boycotting and also the mutual support. If somebody gets deplatformed, that kind of thing, everybody goes on strike. and that's one of the things that people have so little power, that the internet should be like the ancient Greek culture, where they had the system, and it was guaranteed, and it was done all the time to ostracize. Instead of ostracizing, we have canceling, which is like the dark brother of ostracizing someone. But in the ancient Greek city-states, the people would decide which one of the elite do we want to exile. That's great. That's how canceling should work. Canceling is reversed from how it should work. And one of the, it's unsexy, and it's really annoying, but the will must be there amongst people that one of your own gets canceled, you all boycott, you abstain, and that's one of the things that should be realized collectively in this new environment. When we talk about Saturn and Neptune governing large institutions, these are the kind of ideas that we should bring down: the boycott, ostracizing, collective action, assembly, and with creation of new currencies. That's the only power that the elite fear to lose is their control over the wealth. And for those people who work with their hands in your networks and so on and so forth, the more that one can detach from that system, honor other currencies, find different ways to trade, that is how their power will be undone overnight. And there will be no destruction that will be necessary. It will not be necessary to bust into the bank and defeat the security forces, those kinds of things, if it's just simply detached. So when I think about the macrocosm, which is Ahriman is the macrocosm. That's what I think about. When I think about the Luciferic, then I think about things like what Sai was saying, like Luciferic is the personal. Lucifer has to do with those personal motives of sex, money, and violence in the personal life, and that's a whole other can of worms, which usually the group deals with. The group deals with the personal because it's small, but in Ahrimanic terms, that's what I think of in terms of systems.
Well, that makes me think immediately about the personal, or Lucifer is in charge of sex, money, and violence. The system seems to be in charge of violence. So like
Lucifer within the group, within the individual, controls the individual's sex, money, and violence connection.
I was sort of bringing up the sort of, we have a structure which is inverse to it, like it feels like a corruption where I was just following orders sort of thing, where it's just we have systemic. Yeah. We have this systemic rule system that instead of having sovereign sort of well-made judgment, we have sort of fake judges, fake courts, fake, everything's sort of fake. It is not actually aligned to any sort of meaningful order. People die because they were the enemy, not because they did anything wrong. They were just on the other side. And that's that just sort of, that seems like one of the many corruptions in our system. We're talking about this for sort of people and their personal choices and agencies, but the system isn't going anywhere, and we do need to be reforming that. At least thinking about reforming that as we're making our own sort of choices, because at some point our individual choices, or individuals, will become leaders again, and they will be forming networks, and they will be creating systems. And one of the big problems I see in people is they select leaders, or perhaps they have at least in our system, in democratic system, people are, it's probably artificially chosen. Like there's probably a degree to which votes are considered, but it's probably not like a legit, like a real, this is what people want. So I was just thinking about any of these important networks cannot be headed by election, like an electoral sort of committee that doesn't make too much, or an election in since we've done.
I was just to say that the idea that the system is not going anywhere, I think that we should, as much as possible, say the opposite.
Or should I say systems are not going
Yeah.
anywhere. Systems in themselves will exist, but it's just that we need to sort of like get rid of Windows and install Linux sort of thing. We need to do that in our of these systems.
So
Bye, Micah.
thank you.
Hi, Micah.
So
Bye, guys.
there was a great book that I saw right before September 11th, and there was a huge cultural movement in America right before September 11th, where many people were quite conscious of the evils of the economy, globalization, so on and so forth. And the book was called No Logos, and it was in all the coffee shops in London, and it was popular in Manhattan as well. And the person, I think it was Naomi Klein, I forget who the author was, but it was one of the big authors, and she hit on this one simple idea of just stop supporting the big logos, and it was, she put it in materialistic terms, but she's talking about the egregores. Focus on the local, and that, I think, is the one of the best ways to starve the systems, is that they really do live through the label. The egregore is, sees itself in the symbols of the people that, that on the clothing and so on and so forth. That's a huge occult power. And that idea was forgotten, instantly forgotten. It was understood. Okay, Dad's mad. Ahriman's mad. Now it's September 11th. And we had this huge swing in this direction of Ahriman and what people call the toxic masculine. And then Obama comes in, and then we have the huge toxic femininity coming in with the liberalism. But it did not go back to no logos. It did not go back to actually destructuralizing the Ahrimanic. It went to just simply the other side of the battery. And I think that the opportunities are there to develop a mindset to focus on the small, on the very small cultures, very small political groups, and look at infrastructure as being as sovereign as possible. That the sovereignty of the group is responsible for as much connective tissue as possible, and look to starve the egregores not to.
I was just thinking that egregores only exist, or the only reason you would want an egregore or a mass collective sort of spirit is to protect you from other ones. It doesn't serve any other purpose. Because I was just thinking, like my city will not construct a military to protect themselves from like China. That doesn't make any sense.
I agree that physically that's the case, but spiritually, according to Steiner, that in order for humanity to evolve, Ahriman must evolve. That he is like that boat that is floating on the sea of humanity, and that humanity will raise up that ship, and Ahriman will be redeemed at the end of time. He will become human, but through either the suffering of human beings, willing sacrifice, or work, artistic work, and all of that. And so, spiritually speaking, the one reason why you would form an egregore, which is any kind of group, I
don't think you can avoid egregores, right? If you have a group of people, of people, they sort of spring up, like
we're already an egregore.
It's like it just grows.
It's very odd, the passage in the Bible where it's like wherever two congregate, I am there. He's talking about
2 or 3,
like, so
exactly.
He's sort of saying that he is an egg, but I'm sure there's a bunch of other text around the time. The problem with the Bible is most of these things don't have any commentary or like explanation.
Yeah,
they're just sort of said.
According to Steiner, Christ is not accessible to human beings, and will not be accessible to human beings for a long time. Christ is only an egregore. And so every single church, there's a massive denomination of the Catholics. They have a massive egregore, and then they have, through the hierarchy, through their bishops, through the diocese, those are smaller egregores that are basically part of the larger one. And you find if the character becomes different, they'll destroy that whole diocese. They'll take the church right out from the system if they don't recognize the egregore, and that's only what it's based on. It's not a scandal, it's not this or that. Just simply we sniff out that that's not the egregore that we wish, so we call them non-Christian or whatever. But yeah, that statement, wherever two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst, that's an egregore. And Steiner's very clear that individually people can experience initiation and can perceive the Christ, but in the group, no. That there is no group access to Christ. It is Christ egregore.
I've written without sort of thinking about it like that. I've written a ton and spoken on like how the church is just Jesus. The Christ is not there. Like it's not part of the system.
Yeah.
So wait, I have a question. So if you're saying that Christ is the logos or reality, aren't egregores also a part of reality? So you're distinguishing between Christ as reality or logos and then Christ as suboptimal egregore, right?
No, I think it would be that the Christ that appears in a group is not the logos.
Yeah.
That would be it would sort of be the image of Christ in this group. So it is the group approximations of the logos within the minds of these finite individuals. And that is sort of what if the collective that produces this egregore sort of is corrupt enough and grows large enough, then that egregore can take on its own. So it sort of becomes like a fallen angel masquerading as the highest thing.
Yeah, but to the extent a collective can produce an image that is in approximation to Christ within a certain epsilon, that image also does belong onto Christ, even though it is not the full Christ, right?
Well, I think I think the Hindus, not all of them, but their system does this well, where it's like, oh, this form of God is it is, it's always in service to the Parabrahma. It's like it is aware of the infinite form in which all of these lesser forms are appearing, and
you're saying like there's less language and grounding around that in the Christian language, pattern language.
Yeah. If the Christians understood like today that they're what they align to is an angel, which people would often call Christ the ultimate angel, basically, like in a lot of their early teachings. That is that egregore, and if that egregore is in service to basically the Tao, the logo, the whatever, then it works. But if they mistake that finger pointing for the moon, that's where the problem is, and that is what most people do. So they say no, that this bread and wine is literally Jesus, is literally Christ. It's like I don't think you're doing transfiguration correctly. I don't think that's how this is supposed to work. And then so if that image of Christ, or if that image of divinity, let's just say, is skewed, and then generationally those corrupted elements get larger because the people in the body do not know how to sort of clip the cancers out of their system. You get these large sort of let's use the Catholic Church as a huge example, where it's it doesn't promote, but it protects pedophilia. It's just one of the things it does. The egregore itself is what is doing that. It is sort of
it lives through that. I mean, that's one of the things that Steiner said, was that the egregore actually doesn't give a fuck normally about.
I mean, often
what you do. Yeah.
Justification, just to sort of go on that little bit of a tangent, I think that often the justification for something like pederasty is like this amount of controlled sort of trauma does create gifted individuals. That's not just the church, that happens everywhere, and that is kind of the egregore sort of sucking energy out of that, it is that battery mechanism in action there. I just kind of
I think
wanted
there were people there were people who noticed, like I'm doing now, where it's like, oh, this church or this group, they have an egregore, and then that is not the meta, the ultimate, and then they try to have like a reformation where it's like, oh no, we need to return back to the ultimate, and then that becomes an egregore too, and then they keep
Well,
drawing an egregore down.
I think I
bigger.
brought this up the other day when we were talking, that the ultimate goal is to create an egregore that is worthy of Pran Pratishthan, which is a deity or an actual being inhabiting the egregore as a body. And I think that there are a lot of attempts to do that, but the egregore that people end up creating has, so far, most of them have been, these sort of zero-sum battery mechanism structures that fall apart.
I think that's sort of because the soul that would be wearing the egregore, or is the same. Like we have a I guess the egregore that we are living in now is anti-soul. Like it's the black sun. It is the devourer. It devours souls. That's what it is. That's another way that Saturn comes into play, where it's sort of the black reaper. It's just, I don't want light. I don't want life, love, happiness, the good, beauty, etc. I don't want that to exist for whatever reason. Like maybe it's, envious, etc. But that seems to be the core sort of component, and that's how you get things like child sacrifice and abuse, where it's like this pure thing needs to be crushed. So like that is just part of that agency will possess people and get them to do
to
this.
the degree that any egregores do sort of end up being inhabited by any kind of soul, the egregore sort of starts digesting the soul, right? That's what we see happening right now. And so over time it just, it either gets digested or it leaves the egregore altogether.
I think that may be because of things like free will. So that the collective bodies of the people engaged in the egregore they're sort of groomed to delete that higher consciousness spirit from inhabiting their body. They feel sort of threatened by it. So the people themselves are sort
libertarian
of doing this.
With, like freedom as sort of the goal at the end. It's like no agency, no will outside of my own.
Yeah, that's why I think.
But then a very small concept of what you are.
No, I think it's any of those souls that are inhabiting that people are. They're like, they don't know the science of like deity creation, so they're putting their own soul into the egregore, and then it gets eaten. They do not know how to commune with the soul, to bring that into the
what they
culture
think
spirit.
Their soul is, the concept of what I am is very small. I think that it's
Well, that's why we need a system which I've referred to it as meritocratic, but I'm not sure or aristocratic. I'll have to work on that. But basically, you cannot do this work until you know yourself. Like the know thyself sort of at the temple. It's like, stop, you don't. And then someone who does know themselves comes out and is like, they test you a little. They like to work for a while, see if you can even come into the room, because it's like you will just by your very being destabilize the process. You will, that's sort of, our institutions do need that sort of guardian force, which means they can't be inhabited by everybody, or they cannot be directed by not everyone can be a director. That's sort of obvious. One of the pitfalls of modern democracy is sort of claiming that every single person is the director, and they are not, or that they have some sort of agency in realms they do not understand, while simultaneously ensuring that they do not understand, like the education system and the religions and the just the day-to-day interactions with people will retard you. They are hard at work to make sure you are not capable of understanding. This sort of immense delusion field.
I feel as though there are quite a lot of ideas that we're sort of going over that between us we sort of take for granted because we've been talking about them for more than a year.
Well, I mean, that's not. I don't think we need to formally explain everything. Like, I mean, I write a lot, and a lot of things end up being expressed further there. So, like, if people are interested in any idea, they can usually find it elsewhere, or we'll bring it up again with context clues basically around it. But yeah, many people are like it. We'll run into the problem of like colleges where it's like our students don't know how to read, like, or understand information, interpret text or whatever, and we sort of have to ignore that. Not as we may have to systemically focus on it, but we're not big enough yet to start tackling that. It's sort of like, oh, if people can think and sort of intuit, then great. But if they can't, then try again later.
Well, if you're listening to this and you struggle to read, then we highly encourage you to actually work on that first.
Well, yeah. Okay. Okay. 15 minutes left. So, John, what do you want to talk about?
Right. Wow. So here we are. This is the beginning, the threshold. We have now passed through the eye of the needle that we've been talking about so much, that the forces of Pisces has dissolved the institutional global power structures of Saturn. And it has also dissolved our world of the subconscious. So all of the wars, the vortex of experience that we've been participating in has come to this point of quiescence. And now through this conversation, we are here at the dawning of these new possibilities. So we've been talking about the microcosm, the macrocosm, speculating what does it mean for our lives. Sai has given us some wonderful descriptions about how personally she's related to these concepts over the past year, of how Neptune, the world of the unconscious, has influenced her own life, and she's been able to track this. Darian spoke about his relationship to these huge planets, slow-moving planets, in his personal connection, that this is something that he just receives out of personal experience. And for me, my tradition has always been through the mind, through study, and trying to take these things seriously and test them against life. You know, is this real? Is this something to believe in? Is this worth something? And here we are. So if I understand it, the challenge that we're presenting to ourselves is this: would we like to participate in the forces of the macrocosm, in what Saturn and Neptune is offering us? The possibility of restructuring the physical along with the subconscious, the access to the spiritual realm. And this is it. Will something be created here that has a form and that has a service to that world of the subconscious, spiritual, or what have you? And we've been speculating on what that means. You know, what does that mean, apart from the rest of the world? What does that mean apart from the rest of our lives, the other part of our lives? And what could it possibly mean to the power structure in of itself? So we've been characterizing how we've experienced those power structures, how we encounter, especially the internet. I think the internet is probably the best example that we have in modern society of the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. We have the that strange psychic connected experience of the subconscious through the internet. We're constantly meeting polarization and bizarre experiences, which can only really be described, I think, as psychic. And we're also dealing with the huge power issues that, as we previously discussed, we've seen a president deplatformed and silenced. He was effectively silenced by a platform, which is, incomprehensible to me, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But as I've experienced it over the past year, I realized, okay, this is the world. This is the world that we live in. And I see the logic of it. I see the success of Ahriman. And what is the reset going to look like?
I'd like to bring up Cyber Hermetica again on Substack. If anyone wants to learn anything about the sovereign internet sort of thing, sovereign technology, making them not surveillance machines that sort of degrade society. He's a great person to look into. That's all I just.
Thank you. Yeah. It's interesting to me. I perhaps may become interested in taking up something like that. Somebody who's worked on these things, who is actually looking to create. I myself went through it very strongly in my years of IT, where I watched the computer get turned into something that rejected the user. When I first was a LAN administrator, when I first was a technician working on laptops, I could get into the guts of the computer and I could see everything that was going on. There was time, date stamping, all of that was absolutely accessible to the administrator. And then I watched the Windows 95 and Windows 98 operating systems come out, and I saw the deliberate efforts to keep people out. And shortly past the millennium, I no longer had access to it. And at that point, I was no longer interested in the computer as a tool. For me, it's a great magical little box that connects me to you people, connects me to your ideas. It has certain functions, but I no longer hold it to, the standard of a tool that I would subject my own tool belt and tools to. I would have destroyed it a long time ago. And I think I may have told you that anecdote once. For about 6 months, I tried to have a computer around 2015, and I literally destroyed it with a pickaxe because it was, victimized by malware, and that was it. And I was happy that it was gone. But yeah, I mean that's the way carpenter treat.
Why specifically with a pickaxe?
I had a pickaxe, and I thought it would be dramatic, and I was like, I wonder if the head of this will go through the computer, and it did. It went through the computer and through the floor. There was some, I guess, 3/4 inch pine or whatever. But it was there and it was dramatic. So I'm interested in the work that the author does. I love that there are people that do that. I think it's very important for those people who are dedicated to using the computer as a tool to do that. And I will serve that. I will, I will learn how to do that. But it's a big reach for me to imagine dipping back into that world and trying to imagine how can I be involved in creating that structure.
Well, I mean, ideally it would. So much now is tied to digital life, from payment of bills to just interacting with people like this, making it accessible yet secure, transparent, etc. Non-satanic. You mentioned Bill Gates, or you mentioned Microsoft. That entire enterprise seemed to be just evil. I'm very happy that Linux has become very popular now, with efforts by Valve and whoever. Valve is one of the only companies I actually enjoy, and don't see as some Leviathan construct of evil. But then you mentioned the subconscious, unconscious, and when I was studying psychology and then was getting into magic, studying religion, symbols, whatever else, I was realizing, the unconscious and the subconscious, they're just things you haven't made conscious yet. But it's not like another, it stops being the unconscious. Like that's it's you can develop. I mean, some people often call it like lunar consciousness or yin consciousness. You can develop
I think
cognitive.
there's a danger of what you just said being misinterpreted. I don't like that, the way that you phrased it.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't yangify it. You
That's
should
what
not.
ends up happening. I think I've had this argument before of people considering everything that isn't, if you ask people what implicit means, they just consider anything that hasn't been made explicit yet to be implicit, and that's not how it works.
Well, what I mean is, do not translate unconscious yin sort of shadow experiences into a yang format in order to read it. You need to be able to read it directly in its original language, which is through like various impulses and intuitions, and it's hard to formally talk about it because you're using this other side.
Well, this is why
is...
I don't like the dichotomy of conscious versus unconscious, because it gets muddled. But I do like the.
Well, I mean that's just the sort of psychological history.
Well, yeah, but you need to be able to.
Which is why psychology in the West is problematic.
Yes.
Which is why I don't like it. Which is why I need to sort of get rid of it and adopt more of this sort of dual respect model.
You need to be able to see the explicit as well as the implicit. I like that dichotomy slightly more than the conscious versus unconscious one.
I mean, it's just sort of using those terms that's the language most people understand. And at least for me, if I point to either of those, I know what they mean. But the unconscious, I don't like using that term, and it needs to be sort of rewritten.
Well,
the entire field of psychology needs reform.
To make the unconscious conscious, instead of saying it that way, I would say, knowing your conscious as well as knowing your unconscious.
But sort of within consciousness, there are two streams, which prior to now in the West, only one has been favored and the other has been demonized. And that reintegration of the sort of the right brain, as people like what's Ian McGilchrist have said, the master sort of needs to come back and be respected by us, and the systems, the sort of our education and individual people need to sort of create a generational order of reverence for the rest of us, the rest of our mind, of our person, that we have had groomed out of us by the systems that are currently in place. And I'm sure that throughout history, there's been sort of both intentional and just sort of accidental reinforcement or elimination of this. So like we've learned not to respect this sort of yin intuitive element as science took the fore, and this logical, rational left braininess took power. And there were also sort of cabal institutions that were like, oh yes, we see this is very useful to us. We can leverage this left brain focus to prevent the bigger picture thinking from touching these people. Like they not understand what's actually going on in big picture arenas, so we can manipulate them. And I'm hoping the energies of whatever are sort of clearing out that veil between what we call the conscious and unconscious, that they start to become a more flexible and cooperative system. Well, my earbuds are nearly dead. John has to go in how long? How long, John?
About 7 minutes.
Okay. Are there any? Does anyone have questions or want to bring up before time's
What's
up?
an egregore?
Oh yeah.
Heard that a couple times.
An egregore is I've written about it a bunch and I've talked about it several times. An egregore is
I think I have a post on this actually from a very long time ago. That was written in a different context that distinguishes between what is called the difference between what are called swarms, what are called egregores, and then what are called autocults. I can send that to you.
Oh yeah, I'd like that. Thank you.
I mean, John, I know you posted something. I'm not sure. I haven't read it yet. So if it's related to this, any who has anything related, I can put it in the underneath this video and post it.
Excellent.
Send me those things. Anything relevant.
I will just briefly say, I mean, basically, I did this in the terms of digital technology, but I think it generalizes given that digital technology is basically on a layer of energetic networks. But the way I would summarize it is with this sentence is that egregores, by way of autocults, provide swarms with the properties needed to enforce some sort of morality, not actual morality, but morality. And so in this sense, basically the autocult is the cybernetic energetic infrastructure that is basically built or recruited by an egregore, which is an entity, an energetic entity that spreads through networks, in particular computational, but other ways. And basically what the egregore does is it creates this autocult infrastructure, and then the autocult finds a body in what's called a swarm. And the swarm is the actual basically embodied apparatus that takes advantage of, like, for example, open source dynamics to basically turn decision-making and interactions into sort of like mimetic warfare or whatever else. Right? So I think that's the summary that I would put.
Thank you. Excellent.
I like I'll have to read that. When I've talked about it, it's mostly just been through this sort of magical whatever. Getting a lot of these concepts into technological language, I think that'll be enormously useful.
So the reason I say morality is because the type of morality is that a swarm is enforcing is actually like the exact inverse. It's an anti-morality. It tries to basically paralyze energetic flows or information flows, or put discoherence or jaggedness into cognition or mental spaces. And through that paralysis, then it enforces morality, which is actually like a stasis.
So it's like the sort of
Simon says, like when we are operating in this system, this is how we, this is right and this is wrong, and it's like,
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking like the political sphere, where it's like you keep the people confused and slightly afraid, and it makes them cohesive in that way. Like manipulate. That's what I would. That's what came to mind when you said that. Does that sort of map on?
Yeah, I have not. I just wrote like a stupid piece about this a while ago. I'll just attach both of those here.
I think that it should be useful to have the technical description as well as the sort of, I don't know what to call the other one, like metaphysical, spiritual sort of description of it. Both sides are pretty relevant, I would say.
Well, when I've written about it, I've sort of, what have I said? I can't remember what I called the sort of linear left brain one, but I called the mystical. I call that the like mythological consciousness. It's a much more what are they? The word.
Yeah, it's also not a problem. It's not a problem when like the egregore or the superego is another term for it is like healthy, but the issue is that we don't live in a time where any of the superegos are healthy. And then the additional problem is because all of our egos are so weak. This is a very controversial thing to say, like in terms of Western psychology, that like actually one of the problems that all of our egos are very weak. and that a lot of us need ego strengthening, as opposed to this very new age
you become
spiritual.
egoistical because your ego is weak. I think that
Yeah,
if your ego is strong enough, then you don't become, then you don't worship it.
Yeah,
you
but
don't
this like goes against a lot of new age hippie bullshit where it's like the ego is the problem. No, the ego is only the problem because it's like dead bleeding on the side of the road because you didn't actually have it developed properly.
Well, I've sort of seen through taking the phrase pride is the last sin you conquer. I just sort of intuitively understood that and was like, oh, I have to develop my ego sufficiently in order to let go of it. Like it sort of acts as a carrier sort of rocket to get me toward some higher developmental stage.
Yeah. But anyway, you were asking if anyone had anything else, because I know John has to go, but this all seems pretty straightforward to me, like everything that was covered here. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like you're assigning action items, but not that I'm going to take them up, because I think I'm going to spend the next 3 months of my life just fucking off and having fun at minimum. So that's my sadhana, is like fucking around and having fun and watching anime.
Yeah.
that will hopefully keep me out of the cults.
I think sort of what we've been doing here today is just sort of
unless they starve you enough, Regime. If they cut off your, like, let's see how you talk in a couple of weeks.
I was watching.
Sorry, Regime, your account is down to 0. There's a couple of cults who are going to be coming by later.
I was watching like a stream of like professional video games the other day, and I was like, holy shit! There's like so much like recruitment into all sorts of things happening. And of course, I'm stabilized enough to not be recruited into it unless I choose. But I was like, damn. Like, I did not realize there was an entire industry and social scaffolding that has arisen. Like, that's a continuation of like sports, but now it's video games. It's crazy.
It's like Japanese idols. It's the military. It's all of these things. You see this repeating pattern of just recruitment and absorption.
There's been a development.
If you notice that
on your end of the world, Darian, that I'm surprised never got brought up, but I think there was I'm gonna get this wrong probably because I only read it like the headlines, but there was a change in policy or some kind of law about gambling. I think that happened either yesterday or today, and basically the current government is trying to make it impossible for U.S. states to ban the prediction market, the things like Kalshi and and because it is like gambling, turned up to 11, a lot of states are wanting to be able to ban it.
It makes me think of the long-running meme of, what was it, the United States, the Universal Ohio, where like your entire entire United States was Ohio. I'm thinking of like Nevada now, where it's like blackjack and hookers, and just this is America now. We are Gomorrah.
I think it made it onto my radar so fast because I lived in Utah, and I think the governor of Utah has made a public statement that there's no way that we're allowing this in our state. So the fiefdom sort of thing might be that might be where it starts. Is that does the government have the right to enforce these kinds of degenerate things onto the states?
Mormon super soldiers are going to be killing casino owners. Yep, we're going to see it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I must depart. Thank you so much, all of you. Really appreciate seeing all of you and talking with you.
Yeah, good to have you, John.
Look forward to the next time.
All very interesting stuff.
Likewise, thank you.
Well, thanks for.
This is probably a good time to end.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.